Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Money Down Pod. You are listening to me, Kayvon Izami, at Kayvon_sports. My guy, Sean White, at Dumpster Fire Fan. You can follow us on Twitter at Money Down Pod. Thank you so much for tuning in as we talk about the Deshaun Watson saga continues. We'll also sprinkle in some other NFL news going on in general. Rams are paying their guys like they always do, and they're bringing back a fully loaded team. Sean, how are you doing today, my guy?
I'm doing well. Ready to get this Deshaun Watson conversation going because it's pretty bad, to be honest,
Messy.
man. It's a bad conversation to have, but we're going to have it. And I'm pretty sure you're very happy as a Falcons fan that he ended up going to the Browns. So
Very.
I'll let you start off everything how you want to do it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a rough conversation that we're about to have right here.
It is getting worse by the day, without a doubt. It's getting worse by the day. It's looking 10 times worse by the day on the Browns. And there's a lot of Browns fans out there that are gonna disagree with that sentiment because they're still in the mode of they got Deshaun Watson and that's a win. And that could be the case down the road, but I don't know how right now you can look at this situation and feel happy with what the Browns did. It's not only just that they got Deshaun Watson, it's that they paid him fully guaranteed money and they gave away all the picks too to get him. So I want to start with this, all right? Because I put some bullet points here just because I wanted to bring this up. Everybody probably knows the New York Times dropped a big article this week about the whole case. They did their whole investigation and all this stuff. And I wrote down some bullet points here that need to be mentioned. Okay. First of all, the big thing is the New York Times said that Watson booked massage appointments with at least 66 different women over 17 months. Okay, 66 different women over 17 months from fall of 2019 through spring of 2021. Watson previously has stated that he's only had massages with 40 different women. So right away, they're pulling out information that clearly Watson did not say mattered. Okay, and they got this stuff through records, through Cash App, Venmo, Instagram, all that stuff. So they found 66 different women, 24 of which are obviously accusing him of some type of sexual harassment, assault, all that stuff. That's bullet point number one. Bullet point number two is the Texans, who traded Deshaun Watson a couple months ago, have seemed to be brought into this conversation somehow because a security guard gave Deshaun Watson a non-disclosure agreement. I don't really understand any of that stuff, but somehow the Texans are now involved in it. And I do want to point out the Texans have come out and said that they found out about all this stuff the day we all did when the whole investigation came out in March of 2021. Okay. So those are the main things that I want to get. Now, I understand a lot of people immediately go and say this. Well, Kayvon, well, Sean, criminally, he was not indicted. Yes, that is correct. But you also have to understand there's a big difference in indicting someone criminally and putting them behind bars, which is very, very hard to do in this society because you have to have beyond reasonable of doubt, okay? And then there's also just the idea of when there's a lot of smoke here, there's clearly some fire. I mean, 66 different massages, 24 cases now. You're really just like oblivious if you're sitting there saying Watson clearly has nothing going on. There is some weird stuff going on. Pat McAfee said it on his show. I mean, he literally came out on his show this week and called Deshaun Watson a predator. Like he said, at this point, you can just look at it and say he's a predator. That's what some people are starting to say now in this whole NFL conversation. My point that I wanted to really get into this is this. Sean, do you remember when the Dolphins were this close to trading for Deshaun Watson? And it was reported by John McClain, who's a really good Houston reporter, that the deal was pretty much done. It was pretty much done. And at the last second, Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, came out and said, I'm not making this trade unless you settle all of these cases. And Deshaun Watson was going to. And there's a whole article. You can read this. Just type in Mike Florio, John McClain. They rid of it's all facts. Watson was going to settle. Someone got in his ear and said, if you settle, it's an admission of guilt. So Watson decided to back off. They didn't make that trade. Now we're looking at this point now. And the Browns made this trade. And supposedly they didn't investigate the whole situation. They didn't talk to any of the women. And they didn't know that more was coming out. So my question is, were the Browns really that stupid, Sean, to make this trade with Deshaun Watson and not have any type of deal? I mean, look, Stephen Ross, we can call him a lot of things, but at least he was smart enough to realize I'm not making this deal with this guy unless he settles these cases or gets these cases to go away, aka settles them before the trade. Do you really think that the Browns made this deal without saying, by training camp, these have to go away? Like, you have to get these settled and done, because it's starting to look like they didn't put any of those type of clauses in this contract, and the Browns are just sitting there screwed, man. I mean, they're sitting there absolutely screwed.
Yeah, it looks like they just kind of gave him the deal and took him at his word, which
I
is
think
hard
that's
to
exactly
believe.
what they did.
Which is honestly hard to believe, because I mean the timeline of events where a few of these women came out.
Yeah.
Everyone had the same basic reaction that I believe me and you did. We had never heard anything bad about Deshaun Watson. We've been following since Clemson. I mean, Dabo Swinney swore by him, and I mean, he doesn't do that very often. And Dabo usually does have high character dudes, so we were kind of like, yeah, this kind of might be a money thing. Like, and I'm sorry to women about that, but if a woman does come out and accuse a man of something like that, and then that is false, the woman should be punished as well. Let's be honest with that first.
Completely agree.
But then more and more and more just came out, and finally it got to a point where it's like, man, there's too much smoke here. You obviously have been doing some shady shit. Let's be real. And then now we got to where it was like 22, and it's like, yeah, dude, you definitely were doing some inappropriate ass shit. It obviously is tough to prove that in a criminal court of law with no DNA evidence, with no outside witnesses, with anything like that. But these civil cases, it's the case. It's true on that, and we all knew he was going to get suspended. The Browns knew he was going to get suspended. His agent definitely knew he was getting suspended because his salary is $1 million next year. And we talked about it. I told you that when David Mulugheta helped him sign that deal, that he's the most cutthroat agent in the league right now. And that's a good thing as an agent for your clients, but that's what he did. It's $1 million because he knew he was getting suspended for a portion of this year, if not the whole thing. Let's be real. It's got to be the whole thing, man, at this point.
It's got to be.
I've got to move on to that right there for a second, because that's the big overhang. The Browns fucked themselves, dude. That's what they did, because it's got to be the whole year, and there's no debate about it, really, in my mind. You suspended Zeke Elliott on claims that he denied the whole time for 6 games, and I mean there was less evidence and smoke there. That was a he said, she said.
One girl too.
Yeah. You got like a he said, she said that goes back and forth there, and the NFL will still pop you for 6 games. Then you got to look across to baseball with the Trevor Bauer story, which is just abhorrent and everything like that. But Trevor Bauer continues his innocence and says that he was innocent. It was consensual. That's what she wanted. That's a he said, she said. He got rocked for 1.5 years. Like, the baseball didn't come out and play, and that was a one-on-one, 1-for-1. There's obviously something that happened with all these women, like that Deshaun's going at with this, or at least a vast majority of them. I mean, hell, Deshaun even admitted a woman was crying at one point afterward. Like, as a man, that's never happened to me before, and I know it's never happened to a lot of people that I know and associate with. I really haven't heard stories like that outside of from women that I just meet that would talk about it. I never really heard stories like that from dudes that I knew or associated with like that. So it's just scumbag behavior, man. That's all it is. It's scumbag behavior. And the Browns really screwed themselves by not doing some due diligence here, because them and the NFL both seem shocked that 2 more cases would come forward. Deshaun made it seem like these are the only 22. Like that was just some grand scheme that he knew that no one else would come forward. But at 66, man, really, in all honesty, all 66 could jump if they wanted to. Let's be real. Maybe some were consensual and they're going to stay by it, and maybe they were just okay with it. But more people can jump into this at a time, and the NFL does not want this story going into the season. I can promise you that. They want this wrapped up. He's either going to be suspended or he's going to play, and then they're going to run into the season, which I doubt the NFL does. So he's going to be gone, in my opinion.
So a couple things you brought up here that I love that you brought up, and I had this written down too to bring up. I love that you brought up the Trevor Bauer situation, because a lot of people, Sean, me and you have as well, when we talk baseball, a lot of people give Rob Manfred crap for being the worst commissioner in sports. I mean, that has been said many times. This man came out and said I don't care that you were, because he went to court as well criminally, and he got off the hook. There wasn't enough evidence criminally to charge Trevor Bauer either. And Rob Manfred looked at Trevor Bauer and said, I don't give a damn. What you did, something is messed up there, and I'm suspending you for 2 years, and then it went down to a year and a half. So exactly what Sean said. Rob Manfred stepped up and did that. Roger Goodell's going to have to do the same now. This is really, really bad for the NFL. I don't want to hear comparisons to Ben Roethlisberger or anything like that. This is something the NFL has not seen before, and the 1-year suspension minimum has to be it right there. The interesting part that you also brought up is, would they let this go on into the season? Because we all know the Browns gave him $1 million this year. So would it actually be worse to let him play this season and suspend him next season when that big money starts to kick in? I personally agree with you. I don't think the NFL wants it to go that long. I think they want to get this over with. I think they want to suspend him. They don't want him to have to answering questions, the Browns, all that stuff. So I agree. The one thing I want to bring up here is a lot of people are getting on the NFL of, why haven't they made this move yet? And I started to think the same thing, Sean. I started to say, okay, seriously, why is the NFL always so late on this crap? Why do they take so long? But then it started to hit me, man. And I started to think that maybe the NFL is, and this is what I hope they're at least thinking for it to take this long. They're thinking maybe more is going to come out. Maybe they realize maybe 2 more are going to come out, or maybe they just had a feeling that more might come and more might still come. So let's let all of it, because think about this, Sean. If they suspended him 6 games and then 2 more, 4 more, 6 more things came out, people like us and everyone else are going to be screaming, how did this man only get 6 games? Then this New York Times article comes out, all that stuff. So I'm hoping that the NFL is getting all of this information, getting everything to come out, and then they're going to drop the hammer on Deshaun Watson. I'm not trying to make an excuse for the NFL, but I just think that they're trying to make sure everything comes out before dropping the hammer on Deshaun Watson. But it's just plain and simple. If he doesn't at least get a year suspension, Roger Goodell for the NFL office is going to get destroyed, and rightfully so. You cannot let this guy play football at all this year. It's got to be a year suspension, and it's got to hit the Browns where it hurts, which gets me into this point, Sean. And then you can bring other things up here if you want, but I just want to bring this up because owners are pissed at the Browns. Because let's just say it for what it is. The Browns were a desperate organization, and they made a desperate move, okay? When they really didn't need to be a desperate organization. They've been on the come up. They won their first playoff game. Baker was hurt last year, and they took 1 year of Baker, which me and you aren't high on Baker either, but they took 1 bad year of Baker being hurt, and they panicked. So they started to shop around for Watson. Baker freaked out, said, I'm not coming back. Watson said, I'm out on the Browns. And he even quoted, he said, I don't want to play up in that cold weather. He played there one time when he was on the Texans, and it was like a 10-7 game, and he played terrible. So he didn't want to go there. Then the Browns got desperate, and they offered him that contract, $250 million, fully guaranteed, which I just want to say, in the history of the NFL, Aaron Donald, Calvin Johnson, some of the greatest players to ever play the game, no one has ever gotten a fully guaranteed contract. This guy is the guy to get that fully guaranteed contract for the first time. So now all these organizations and owners are pissed, and rightfully so. Sean, I know you know this, but for the listeners, when someone gets a fully guaranteed contract, ladies and gentlemen, that is straight cash. That is straight cash out of the owner's pocket. So there's a difference between cash and cap, all right? The reason why the Rams can pay all these players is because their owner has cash. They do things, they void years, they push it out. Their owner has the cash to pay him. Sean, do you think that Mike Brown, the owner of the Cincinnati Bengals, has that much cash to pay Joe Burrow? Do you think Dean Spanos, the owner of the Chargers, has that much cash to pay Justin Herbert? Luckily, your owner does have that much cash to pay Trevor Lawrence when his contract comes up. Your owner's very, very rich. Mike Brown's not, I mean, obviously he's rich, but in terms of the other owners, he's not that rich. Dean Spanos is not that rich. These other owners, man, are pissed off because they don't have that money to pay these kind of guys like that. They don't have that type of cash that they can give I'm telling you, man, the Browns really screwed things up. And it's like they screwed things up on this guy out of all people.
Yeah, and actually, if you look at it, they kind of screwed it up for Lamar, like with the Ravens situation.
Good one too.
Because Lamar's nothing but hardworking and good to the community, as far as we can tell, with all that.
Yep.
And Lamar's basically like, "Look, you see what they gave this guy right here? We're gonna have to give me a good amount of money." And I think the Ravens are really struggling with what to give him. I think that's why that contract's hitting a snag. You're right on that. The real one right there you're talking about too is with the Bengals, right in the same state. I think the only thing Bengals worry about with Burrow outside of health is, are they going to be able to afford the contract? Because you're right. When you guarantee all this money, any guaranteed money, the owner immediately has to put an escrow to pay out over the years. It has to go and sit in escrow. Like, it's going to go there no matter what. They're going to cut that first signing bonus check, and then the rest goes into an escrow account. And yes, teams like the Rams that have Kroenke, he's able to just – whatever money you need, right into it. Exactly. Teams like my Jags, Deshaun Khan's a billionaire. He's able to do that immediately. Yeah. And even though we don't have success, we've always paid free agents. So that's how we're able to. He's able to do that with cash. Spanos is just cheap. Spanos actually has the cash to do that.
He does actually have the cash. You're right. He's just cheap.
Yeah, but I don't see Spanos wanting to do that with Herbert either. Here's the thing with the Browns. Jimmy Haslam's a wild dude, man. Screwing over the truckers like he did. He's a shady business guy too. Yeah. Him and Dan Snyder's in that shady business guy kind of role out there. And the way he did that is something else. I wanted to go back for 1 second about what you're saying with the NFL. Yeah. I can see them waiting, and I understand, because what you said makes sense. You got to see if some extra people come out of the woodwork, because they're never, ever, ever. If you don't think the NFL is good at one thing, they're good at adapting, and they're good at not making the same mistake twice. They made that Ray Rice mistake, and then that video came out. They will never do that again. So that's why they're waiting right now. And I understand the wait on that, because now we have 2 more women coming out right here. Now we have this and that. What if it gets popped for 50, 55? After they suspend him for a year, then everybody's like, well, that's double the amount that you suspended him for. Go back and do it. I think the move would be to suspend him indefinitely without giving a number. That would probably be smart right now. That's the only other thing that I would change up. But I do wonder if there's a little bit of Roger out there and a little bit at the league offices that is taking your point of that and being like, you know what? He's at $1 million right now, and he's going to be able to appeal the suspension and play a few games, especially when it happens. I wonder if there's a little bit of Roger that's like, I'm going to watch these civil suits and see how long it drags out, so I can really hit him for the big money parts that come out, because then the Browns will be wasting title year windows as well, because that would punish him and the Browns even more so. This year right here, they're kind of both expecting it. You see it with the contract. You see it with how the Browns are operating. They kind of both expect this year is the one in jeopardy. I do wonder if the NFL is going to try to hit them with that second year a little bit and really dig into the ribs of that for punishment, because this is unprecedented. And I think the NFL doesn't want to look bad. I think the NFL knows that baseball came out and did this. We know the NBA is heavy on stuff like this as well. So I know the NFL don't want to look like they're not treating women correctly, because women actually watch the NFL more than the other sports. That's what it is. My wife watches. She's more consistent with that. She plays fantasy football. The NFL has a unique position where a lot of women do view the sport. And I think they want to make a statement protecting these women after what happened with Deshaun Watson. It's just a shame, man, because his character was never in question. And now all of a sudden this happens. I think you've got to put an emphasis on that when you're looking at your quarterback, especially. You got to make sure your guy's at the highest of levels at this point.
Without a doubt. I mean, it really, if you, like you said, man, if you think back, and I want to come back to that because there's a couple things you said there I love. I want, like you said, man, think about him coming out of Clemson. I mean, Dabo called him MJ. I mean, Dabo talked so high on. We all thought it. We all thought he was, and then we see what happens. Just crazy to me. So I love that you brought up how the NFL loves to adapt, and the best comparison, even though it's harsh and it sucks, we have to think about that, but the best comparison is the Ray Rice thing. The Ray Rice thing was one of the most down moments in the NFL history. It was terrible. When that video came out, it was awful, man. And I feel kind of like dirty saying this, but look, it's just facts. And Deshaun, if someone didn't tell Deshaun in his ear this, then Deshaun's around the wrong people. Guys, if you don't think him signing a $250 million deal doesn't expand on what these women want, or maybe more women come. I mean, I understand that money can't change what he did to them, what he allegedly did to them. You can't change that. What he did to them, that's going to be with them forever. That's terrible. But think about when he could have settled all these cases when he was going to be traded to the Dolphins. And then now he signs a $250 million deal. These other women that were 66 that haven't allegedly reported, they could see that and say, man, this is a slap in the face. Like, this is an absolute slap in the face to me. And if he really did do something to me, why would they not jump on board to this? Like, so that if I'm one of those women, like, you can't even imagine how they're feeling right now. So to that point right there, more could come out. Like, we've already seen 2 more come out. And because of that, that's why the NFL has to wait. Now, will it get to the point where, which could then go into your point of, maybe they will go and wait to let him play this whole season so they can let everything come out. I just think the only thing that the NFL is worried about is people like Mike Florio and some of these guys that are hard on this topic that want to see the NFL do something. They're going to keep pushing it. But the one thing that the NFL would love to be able to do is they would love to be on the right side of the PR for once in terms of stuff like this, right? They've got the Brian Flores lawsuit going on. There's a whole discussion about there's not enough African-American head coaches out there. There's a lot. The Ray Rice thing happened. There's a lot of things that a lot of people would say the NFL has dropped the ball on. This could be their one chance, other than the city of the Browns fans and the ones that wanted Watson and all that stuff, to really let everyone else be like, good job. Good job. You did the right thing, the NFL. You actually, for the first time, went overboard and gave him the maximum punishment instead of some measly 6 games, 8 games punishment, which is why I'm with you. It has to be a year. And I really don't care how long it takes them. Like, again, I know there's so many people up in arms about it. I just want them to get it right. That's all that matters to me, man. I just want them to get it right.
Yeah, so here's where I think they're at a rock at a hard place. I don't think they want him to play this year.
I agree.
But I also think they want to punish the Browns and him more severely than, oh, you lost your $1 million. Like, so that's where I think they're at. I think I wouldn't be surprised if the NFL didn't go 2.
I wouldn't either.
And here's what I think about that. They're not going to let him play this year because if you look at it, if Deshaun can adapt kind of how Stafford and Brady has, this is actually a Super Bowl roster for the Browns. And I think the last thing they want is the Browns win the Super Bowl this year. So they're not going to let that happen, first off. Secondly, I do think they want to hit the money hard. I think the smart move would be you hit him with 2. Because if he appeals it, you could probably go to 1.5 and you still hit that half season off on him. And that would probably be a way easier way to do that. Because I just don't see them letting him play this year, like just with how the PR is. Unless it's like him throwing appeals around and he gets like, you know how they'll do the like one random game, you get to play one game before you get suspended, which is always kind of crazy. But I don't think they're going to want him to play. So I think that's where the NFL is on that.
It's a great point.
The thing you're talking about with the women, though, and Deshaun, what's he even doing, bro? Like, honestly, like, can we talk about like what a scumbag he is for 1 second? Like, honestly, you're a pro athlete, dude. I mean, we know like lower level pros that like we went to high school with. It's not that hard to be able to find someone for casual sex. And that's not saying anything about like women and men going around and sleeping around together. You're a grown adult. As long as you're both consenting, you can do what you want to. It's not that hard for some of these dudes to go out there and do that. Why are you getting 66 massage therapists to do this? And he's got a girlfriend on top of it, so I don't know if that played a key role in it. Like he just felt like that was the best way to sneak around on his girlfriend, or if they had a deal going on. Nobody really knows about his personal life about like that. But man, you're literally one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league in Houston, Texas. Like, there's enough people out there where you could get on an app right now, Tinder, Bumble, anywhere, and you can find someone that's willing to have consenting casual sex with you. You don't have to pull this massage therapist move. It's just such a scumbag thing, dude. It's so Dummy.
He's absolute freak. And then it goes into this point, which you're kind of getting to here, man. Like kind of like actors, they say, their moneymaker is their face. Mm-hmm. The athletes, their moneymakers is their body, bro. And when have you ever heard of an athlete going to 66 different people to touch that moneymaker, to mess with that moneymaker, their body? Like some of these pro athletes, dude, they won't let anybody touch their body but one massage, like one person, because it's that important to them. They find someone that knows how to massage them the right way, and then that's it. This guy clearly, he clearly gets off on massages and doing it in a dirty way, and it's disgusting. He's a scumbag, and that's why, again, the NFL has to hit him where it hurts. They cannot. And then I want you to get into something you told me off air here. They can't let him just be suspended for 1 year and only lose $1 million, or just be suspended for 6 games and only lose $500,000. They have to hit him where it hurts, and they have to hit the Browns where it hurts as well for not investigating more on this. I mean, the Browns are so stupid. I mean, they are really dumb, bro. If they just gave him this contract with no stipulations of, if more cases come out, the contract voids. If you don't settle before the season's over, before the season begins, the contract voids. If they didn't put that in there, then the Browns deserve everything they get, because they're the dumbest thing ever. But I want you to touch on the football aspect of this, because you brought this up off air when I said, I said something about how, I mean, who knows? Like I said something about Watson. Yeah, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And then you immediately cut me off and you said, is he though? Will he be though after he doesn't play for 2 years? Touch on that.
Yeah, if he gets hit for a year, that's 2 years off of football, man. I know Deshaun was playing at probably a top, non-debatably a top 8 level. A lot of people have him top 5. Some would say in top 3. Mm-hmm. There's no way he's going to come back and just be at that level, especially not the first year. You don't take 2 years off of something. Have you all seen Klay Thompson playing in the finals after he had those 2 injuries? And I know those are injuries, but that's still 2 years off. The game evolves. I mean, when Deshaun was still playing, a lot of people were running that Gus Bradley, Pete Carroll, friggin' 3 high safety look. Or 2 high, 1 high, single high safety with the coverage underneath that Mahomes tears up. That was barely getting run last year anymore. He hasn't even seen some of the defenses that are being thrown out there, and you can look at it on film and practice it on a practice field. It's funny, the Browns keep putting out clips of John Johnson III picking him off in practice. Like, you're getting picked by one of the best defenses in the league, and you're in a physical, tough division. When you're going against that Steelers defense, it's not what you see in the AFC South, man. The Colts have been down for a while, and they're still trying to build back up. They're just getting good now that he's been suspended. The Jags have been terrible for a while. The Titans run the same crew of people, and that's how they've been running the division lately. You're going up against defenses you haven't seen before. It's kind of crazy to sit here and expect that after 2 years off, because I'm assuming he gets at least a year. After 2 years off, he's going to come back in and be an automatic top 10 quarterback. He's going to just come in and be able to adapt to those defenses. He already kind of, as a player, the one knock I always had on Deshaun was a lot of times he just threw the ball up to Hop, and Hop would bail him out.
Yep, you
don't have that on this team, and you don't have that defensive coverage like that anymore. He was already kind of a turnover-prone player in that way. Now you're going to send him up there with 2 years off, not really knowing how the speed of the game is adjusted, not really knowing stuff like that. So whenever the Browns fans that are all about Deshaun, and I do want to say, I know there's a lot of Browns fans that hated the move and don't.
There are.
So I respect that. But there's a lot that do love Deshaun and are glad he's there, even though all this is happening off the field, and they separate those two. If you're a Deshaun Watson lover right now that just thinks he's going to come in and be a top 5 quarterback, better be lucky if he's a top 12 quarterback coming off of 2 years off. It's a completely different game, man. Completely different. He's going to have to adjust to that. So that's going to be something I'm looking for when he does come back to play, because I think that's just insane to assume he's going to be that high of an apex just immediately off the start.
Yeah, I think it's a phenomenal point. I'm glad you brought in the coverages there. That's why I wanted you to bring this up. I want to say one last thing, and then I want to switch into Baker, the Baker part of this, and then your point about someone you think might actually be traded to the Browns. But I want to mention this. There's a reason, bro. And Deshaun, this is why it's so crazy. Deshaun even alluded to this himself. There's a reason that the Cleveland Browns hasn't had a 4,000-yard passer in a season in over 15 years. Yes, they've been really bad at drafting quarterbacks. They've had some really bad guys there, but there's a reason other than just that. That stadium, if anyone's ever been near that stadium or just heard someone talk about that stadium, is literally right off the coast of that the famous lake that's right there, Lake Erie or whatever. Yeah, it's literally right there. Supposedly the wind, even when it's a sunny day, gust just blows right off of that lake onto that stadium. And it's a hard place to throw the football, man. And he's going to be playing half of his games there. And then the other half, he's going to be playing all outdoor at Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. I'm so glad you brought it. It's not like he's going to Jacksonville and playing them twice a year, or the Colts when they were bad. Like, it is a whole different ball game. And playing in that stadium, quarterbacks have talked about it, man. It is hard to throw the ball in that stadium. It really, really is. So it's going to be phenomenal to watch what happens. I want to bring this up, and then I want you to turn it, but is there any possible chance that Baker Mayfield will decide to come back if and when, I'm putting the win here because I'm trusting the NFL, drops a year-long plus suspension? And listen, to me, my answer is no because of who Baker is. But in realistic, man, Baker really, he really should think about this because you just alluded to it. This is a Super Bowl roster. Right now, nobody wants this guy, whether it's because they don't like him or whether it's because his $18 million salary. Listen to that. A quarterback in the NFL that has won a playoff game a year ago has an $18 million salary. That is like chump change for these. These quarterbacks are making so much money, and this guy has an $18 million salary and nobody wants him. Why not go there, play with this star-studded team? Deshaun's gone for the year. Show everyone, just show up the Browns organization. Just play for the players. Show up the Browns organization that you can actually be the quarterback, ball out, take them to the playoffs, and then go sign a big deal with someone else. You have a better chance of doing that than playing with a Seattle team that you've never played with. You're not familiar with their roster. Playing with a Panthers team that's garbage. Like, you're not familiar with their roster. Do you think Baker, do you see, first of all, Baker doing this at all? And if so, do you think it would be a smart move?
I don't see the Browns letting it happen. I don't see Baker or the Browns letting it happen.
Really?
I think they're completely moved on from Baker at this point. I think they're literally trying to trade him. A lot of the Browns insider people and a lot I think you've seen maybe a few of the insiders on ESPN tweet this out. The Browns are okay with eating some of the salary now.
Yeah, I saw it too.
So once that happens, they're just trying to get rid of him without having to let him go, because before the draft, I think they were scared he was going to go to the Steelers, really, and just be with Trubisky. But now that they drafted Pickett, I don't think they really care as much. I think they're just trying to get something back for him at this point, or maybe not have to pay the full salary, maybe pay 15 of it, which it's weird that they would worry about $3 million at this point, all that they did, but that's kind of what they're doing. I don't see Baker coming back because Baker's got too much pride in him for that. But that's just how Baker is as a person. And that's that chip on the shoulder he's always had. His greatest success is his greatest weakness, to be honest. That's kind of where he's at on that. I don't see the Browns letting it happen because too many of their players came out and kind of took a shit on him over the whole Odell situation. I just don't think he'd be wanted back there, even with the whole thing going on with Deshaun overhanging. I just don't think they want Baker back, that type of personality. He's not the type of backup quarterback you want, and he, in this situation, would be the backup quarterback because he'd be playing for a year with a starter hurt. So I just don't see that being a thing that they do. What I do see them doing, which is what we talked about, I think Jimmy G's an option there because I think the Niners are waiting around for somebody to get hurt or somebody to make an offer. The Panthers have been kind of sniffing around, I think, on him. But I think the Jimmy G's an option for the Browns as well. He would obviously have to take some of the pay cut down, and restructure that deal. I think he would be okay if you restructure it for another year. He would then sit behind Watson if Watson's only gone for a year. Or you can give him incentives on the second year where, hey, if Watson gets popped for 2, you can play for us for 2. The thing that you brought up about that is, though, the Browns are really analytic about stuff like that. And you are right about the wind whipping in that stadium. That's going to be a turnover waiting to happen. They better be running the ball all the time in the winter because what you're saying is true. Jimmy G's arm is not going to cut through that wind.
Yeah.
If that's the case. Honestly, I'm glad you brought that up too. I wanted to double back and say something about that. I'm not sure Deshaun's arm's going to cut through the wind all that.
No, it's tough, dude.
Deshaun has a strong arm.
Yeah.
He doesn't have like a howitzer arm back there. It doesn't cut through wind like that. And really, it's a few and far in between. The thing is, the people that have had success in that stadium has been like away teams. It's been Big Ben. Big Ben can cut through the wind. It's been Flacco, who is as inconsistent as he is. He can cut through all that wind out there. He just had a gun of an arm. Like you look at like a Josh Allen, I'm sure could come in, and Justin Herbert and Mahomes. That group of quarterbacks. If you're a Browns fan, I don't know why. I know they draft here and there crazy amounts of quarterbacks. I don't know why every single one of them wasn't that prototype until they hit on one. Like I really don't. You know the funny thing about it is I think Burrow actually struggles in that stadium as good.
Yeah,
as
he does. He hasn't won. He hasn't won there.
Yeah, I think the Browns beat him consistently there, and he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league at this point. I do think it's funny because I think Deshaun's arm mimics Burrow's a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see if Deshaun can overcome that. But I do think Jimmy G's an option there. I just think you're going to have to see a lot of 8-yard passes and a big amount of run game for them to be able to make the playoffs if that's the move. But they're going to need someone because I don't see them trotting out Brissett for a year at all. I just don't see that happening. And that's an interesting thing to look at going forward.
Yeah, I think your Jimmy G point is fascinating. I think you're 100% right on the Baker Mayfield point. I just think it's a conversation that's interesting, and I wanted to bring it up. Whether the Browns are out on it or Baker, it's not going to work. Baker's ego is not going to let him.
I'm telling you, I like Baker in Arizona. I really do.
I like that too.
I think if he went back to Cliff, that's the same scheme they're going to run. He'd back up Kyler and be a talented backup because Kyler gets dinged once or twice. I think Cliff would be the type that could actually get him back to his college roots, and they'd run that type of offense that he's good in and everything like that. I think Baker would be happy there. He'd just have to go and accept that he's behind Kyler.
Yeah. And I don't know if he will. I think that Baker ends up being on Seattle, to be honest with you. I still think that's going to happen. I just think that the Seahawks are so stingy. They're not going to do it unless they get him for free, like literally. And I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think that's what they're waiting on to happen, which I don't think is a bad thing. They have DK. They have some guys. I've never been high on Baker that much anyways, but we'll see what happens. Bottom line is the Browns are in trouble. And I really haven't seen anyone bring up the idea of Jimmy G going there. So I think that's fascinating that you brought that up, and we'll watch what happens from here. Sean, let's move on. That's enough talking about that guy, to be honest with you. We're kind of done with that. We will bring it up again once the NFL finally does something. But again, like me and Sean said, we're okay with them taking their time. I know a lot of people are really hot and heavy about this. As long as they get it right, we're okay with it. Now, if they take their time and end up suspending them for 6 games, then we will be here screaming our lungs out at the camera. But we'll wait for that to happen. Sean, let's move on to some big NFL news. We talked earlier about the cash that Stan Kroenke has, and boy, is he throwing around cash like it is just freaking leaves on a fall day. He's just letting it fly. He is paying guys left and right. Aaron Donald just got a massive deal, 2-year extension, by the way, which is not that much, which tells me that Aaron Donald really might actually be willing to retire at some point soon instead of signing a much bigger deal in terms of year-wise. Cooper Kupp also gets the deal that he deserved. He, to me, is, if not the best, one of the best receivers in the league. And he got a little bit of a pay cut as well. He took a little bit of a pay cut as well, technically, if you look at it salary-wise. So what do you think about this? To me, man, this is just like, I'll be honest. As a Falcons fan, I'm jealous. Like, I'm jealous. Like, this is how you run an organization, man. This is how you do it. Like, who cares about the cap? Like, the cap is not real when you do it, when you have an owner like Kroenke, who is willing, because there's a difference between cap and cash. Like, these executives, these GMs, these former GMs, they will tell you this stuff. And Kroenke has the cash, and they make it work, and he is willing to pay. And now the Rams are sitting there, bro, and they should be as big of favorites as anyone's to repeat because they have everyone back, and they're ready to roll.
Yeah, so the Rams run a franchise how I like to see a franchise ran, except for they don't really do the draft pick thing that I enjoy as much. I've said on the show a lot that I actually model my front office structure that I would prefer after the Saints, which are also masters of doing this. The Saints and Rams somehow can manipulate the cap better than anyone in the league.
Yep.
I mean, they could be over the cap by like 50, 60 million and all of a sudden keep basically all their players but one and somehow be under it by 30 million. And you're like, how'd that happen? It's kind of crazy to watch. So that's one thing. For two, I think this signals, and I think the GM Snead knows it. I think McVay knows it. This is a kind of a 2 to 3 year window deal where they're going to try to get as many Super Bowls as they can right here before they not necessarily rebuild, but before they start to focus on, all right, we're going to have to get some stars to replace, like before they start trading draft picks out of there or either deciding to take a few every now and then before they're like, okay, we don't have our main dominant defensive lineman Aaron Donald anymore. Jalen Ramsey's an older corner at that point. Kupp and Stafford both come up, I think, at 24 now, the way they did it.
Yep.
Or no, 24, 25 right there. So both of them would have to be reworked and brought into the fold, and they'd have the option there. Which, I mean, Allen Robinson's deal ends there. So you're seeing a lot of these big money deals end right around that same 2 to 3 year window. I think they now know this. I think that's what they're going to go for. And Donald has that opt in, opt out at the end for 30 million. And really, it's going to be up to him if he wants to play or not. And Aaron Donald has every right to retire right now. He's a Hall of Famer, a top 4 defender in the history of the game. At this point, if he was to retire just right now, so he can do what he wants to, man. He's the best player in the league that's not a quarterback, and really I'd take him up there with him too. Just quarterback's so important. Same. The other thing is Stafford and Kupp's going to be interesting because I think Stafford probably is going to want to keep going after this, and I don't know if the Rams are going to be in a position to do that. But I do think that's an interesting thing to look at going forward because I think he's going to have those 3 years with him and Kupp. And then it's going to be, okay, what do I have around me? Maybe I need to go kind of do a Brady and a Rodgers thing, or will he be content to retire? I just think it's a 3 year window right now. I think the Rams know that the NFC is a lot weaker at this point. They can make a run at 2-3 Super Bowls here over these next 2-3 years and really, really put a stamp on their time in LA and really put a stamp on those Super Bowls right there that they have.
I completely agree. I think that's a really good point of what you bring up with the way the contracts run out around the exact same time, pretty much. They're clearly telling us that, and I respect that they're doing that and they're telling us that way. And another part of this is the NFC is weak. Brady's back. Tampa's going to be really good.
Brady's here for 2 years max. I think it's one.
I mean, Brady might leave to another team after this year. I like that. He really might. So or he might retire completely and go to the Fox thing, which we've already talked about that. You can find that episode wherever you listen to our podcast. But to me, the NFC is wide open. The Rams are looking at it and they're taking advantage of it. And look, the Packers, they lost Devontae Adams. To me, it's really going to be between the Rams and the Bucks this 1 year. And then, like you said, next year, who knows what happens from there when Brady, if he retires or goes somewhere else. So I think the Rams are doing the right thing. I love how they're doing it. I think that Donald was not going to retire. I think he was just negotiating, and rightfully so. But I do think he could retire shortly after that. So they just run their organization the right way. And one thing you said, they don't do the whole picks thing. But what people always forget about that is they don't do the whole picks thing in the first and second round where it's all juicy and great. But, man, they know how to hit on their players in round 3, 4, 5, and 6, which is how that works. The FU picks things does not work unless you're able to hit on the later round players. And Les Snead in that scouting department, they know how to do it really well. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens. But Kupp deserved a deal. I'm really glad Kupp got a deal. He deserved it, man. I'm high on him again this year.
It was time for him.
It was really time for him. Super high on him this year in fantasy again. I hate where his value is now, though. He's going to be going like we'll get way into this in a fantasy discussion when we do it, but he's going to be going like 1 overall in a lot of drafts.
AB 1 overall for 3 years, like AB did.
Yeah, I mean, dude, seriously though, he might go 1. I've actually seen in some mock drafts where he goes 1 overall in the whole thing, like over running backs.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Antonio Brown for about 2-3 years was legit like 1 or 2 overall every year.
Yeah,
I think that's where Kupp is.
And I couldn't even hate on that. What the season he had, again, it takes away the value, but the season he had and the relationship that he has with Stafford is impeccable. And I don't see Allen Robinson coming in and really hurting that. again, we'll get into this. We're going to be putting out a ton of fantasy conversations out there, but this was just one thing I wanted to hit on there. And then other than that, man, was there any other NFL notes you want to hit on before we head on out?
No, I think we're good on that. Like I said, we're going to start doing some division talk here soon. We're going to do a lot more college football preview stuff because we have a lot of college football to preview. And big thing, we're doing NBA draft talk and finishing up the finals for that NBA draft and finals time. And then we're going to go straight into fantasy football. It's going to be a lot of fantasy stuff that we're going to discuss. Me and Kayvon are big time players. We play several leagues a year. We know a lot of the different rule sets and everything like that. So we're going to do a lot of that. And we really want a lot of discussion with that. Because that's the thing about fantasy football, man. It's not great to bring up if you're just trying to kind of like a work event or at a party, just talking about your fantasy team. Nobody wants to care about that. But the internet in general, man, there's a lot of people that's like us that just love fantasy football and wants to talk about it. So we love to respond to a lot of stuff like that you want to bring in there, especially fantasy football things you might agree with or disagree with. Everybody feels like they're an expert in fantasy football, so it's a fun thing to debate about. So I can't wait to put that content out for you guys because we feel like we know what we're talking about and we know what we're talking about in that way. And there's a lot of people out there like that feel that way too that might come back at us. So I can't wait for that discussion during the fantasy football season. We'll get that started.
No doubt about that. And then also the ones out there that are just new to it. I meet people every day that are like, man, I'm just now starting to get into fantasy football. And it's like, where have you been, first of all? But second, I'm glad you're getting involved. Those that have questions, all that stuff, bring them on. Because like Sean said, fantasy football is by far the one topic where you love to get discussion because it could be so out there on takes, right? This guy could have this person as QB1. Sean could have that QB as QB4 or 5. Like that's how things go. So we'll talk about our drafts, our teams, the rankings, all that type of stuff, and we'll have a lot of fun with it. But appreciate everyone tuning in. Let us know. Look, this was a hot and heavy topic today, but let us know your thoughts on it. Like, do you think a 2-year suspension is too harsh? And if so, why? Do you think that a 1-year suspension is not enough and it needs to be 2 years? I want to know why. I want to hear y'all's thoughts on the Deshaun Watson thing. What is a reasonable punishment in your eyes if you're Commissioner Goodell? And what would you do to lay the hammer on? And if you do think a year is too much, I got to know why so I can come back and really understand your reasoning. I know there's people out there that think that a year is too long. Again, I need to hear why that is. So thank you for tuning in. Reach out to us on Twitter at MoneyDownPod. You can reach out to Sean himself at DumpsterFireFan, myself at Kayvon_Sports. Talk to you soon.